For more MTG resources and articles, check out paperchampion.net.
Hey everybody, this is Tao at the Forge, and today I want to talk to you about the ban list that just came out. Now, before I begin, I want to recognize that, yeah, a lot of people are going to be upset about this because they would have just invested a lot of money into the card. So, there's always going to be that person that just bought the playset of Smuggler's Copters, or, they just cracked that foil Emrakul and didn't trade it. And then, they feel like they lost a ton of money, and they actually may have lost a ton of money. Unfortunately, that happens sometimes. It actually happened to me where I just actually bought like a Splinter Twin deck, and then like a week later, Splinter Twin got banned, and I was just like, oh no, But unfortunately, we have to look out for the health of the game overall. Now, that doesn't mean that Wizards can just go willy-nilly and, just start banning cards like crazy and they don't have to worry about their quality control. And I really hope that's not the path that they're going on, where, they just make whatever cards they feel like and don't test them appropriately and then just ban them later, because that's not really fair to their players. That being said, they also, because they are now focusing almost exclusively on standard rather than modern or vintage or any other format, they have to really look out for standard, and they need to keep it fresh, and especially with such long rotation times. They can't have like cards that are completely dominating the format or certain deck types, otherwise Magic will just get too stale and people will stop playing it. And also, like, the cards will get just super expensive, if you don't have them. So anyways, let's get onto the ban list cards. So the first one is Emrakul, the Promised End. Now, I like Emrakul. Emrakul is like a really cool card. 13 for 13, with flying, trample, and protection from instants. Now, the problem with this is that, this card is like super powerful. But really, it's supposed to be. It's Emrakul. Right? Like, this is like the world destroying, like Cthulhu type thing. So it's supposed to be super powerful. But one of the problems is that Emrakul can be cost for one less for each card type. So, in the graveyard. So you can get Delirium, on it. Even that means that you can still cast it for maybe like 8 or 9. So still, it's not super OP. But really, the problem is with Aetherworks Marvel. So when a player has Aetherworks Marvel, they can cheat Emrakul onto the battlefield, by turn 4 or 5. And getting a 13/13 for, with flying, trample, protection from instants, on turn 4 or 5, like, just really is broken. Like, the other thing is that not only that, but when you cast Emrakul, you gain control of your target opponent's next turn. So then you could, like, attack with all their creatures right into Emrakul. You could tap all their mana, waste all their cards, like use their burn to kill themselves, and all sorts of other stuff like that, right? And yeah, they get another turn to kind of recover, but good luck after that, right? Now, one of the problems is with Aetherworks Marvel is that even if you counter it, right, or you find a way to remove Emrakul, she was still cast, right? So then you still get to target control your target opponent, and that again is just kind of unfair. There's not really any way you can stop it then, except to try and get rid of Aetherworks Marvel. It means that you have to build a deck specifically just to break that card, right? So I think that I agree with this one. The only problem is that I think they may have actually been better banning Aetherworks Marvel, because other people are just going to find other ways to cheat the other big Eldrazi, and right, so you're going to see like Ulamogs and stuff like that coming in. We'll see how it goes. You might see like another banning of Aetherworks Marvel, coming up, depending on how the other decks go. But the other Eldrazi Titans are not nearly as oppressive as Emrakul is. The next card in the ban list was Smuggler's Copter. Now, I actually totally agree with this. Now, I don't play a lot of standard, but when you have a card that's in like 60% of the decks as a playset, not even a one-up, just as a playset, that's, that means that card is like seriously OP, right? Like, so first of all, like, if you look at like my How to Spot a Good Card video, you can tell like a 2-mana 3/3 is already above curve. Right, and yeah, it has crew 1, but that crew 1, like the one creature that's crewing it doesn't even have, like, it can have summoning sickness, right? So like, it just says tap any number of creatures you control with total power 1 or more. So that could be, like Servo or something like that, that has summoning sickness. And then you have like this 3/3 in the air, right? But more than that, the ability like to loot, where you can draw a card and then discard a card, is just huge. And so if you get this flyer out, like you're looting and you're like, the ability to go through your deck like that and find the cards that you need is super, super powerful. Like, a lot of people like kind of discount that, like with Scry or something like that. The ability to constantly dig into your deck, is such a powerful ability. And I think a lot of people don't really get that, and that's why they say, like, well, what's the big deal? Well, it is actually a big deal. And the problem, like, you can see that because everybody's running Smuggler's Copter, right? Now the problem is that it's a rare, and if you have, like, everybody feels like they have to have it, and especially as a playset, so you have these cards basically just skyrocketing in price, and I totally feel it, like, because if someone bought like a playset of these, like, now you're going to lose all your money from them. I don't know if they're modern viable, but like, overall, like, it does hurt. But Smuggler's Copter is, almost too good if everybody feels like they have to have it. And that's one of the things that Wizard said, is that, it breaks the diversity of the deck types. So if you're not running a 4 of these, like, you just, have a really low chance to win. Right? So, like, saying that people have to have them is, really kind of tough. Well, and the problem is that, like, now, like, almost everybody has a playset, and they're going to be unloading them. So if you're looking at picking up a set of these for Modern or something like that, in the coming days when everyone starts unloading these, that might be the time to pick them up. The next card in Standard is the Reflector Mage. Now, Reflector Mage is 1 in a white and a blue for a 2/3 human wizard. Now, I'm not sure how I feel about this one. I think that Reflector Mage just is a little bit OP, and that's why they banned him. Not, like, Spell Queller is just as irritating, but if not maybe more irritating, and I actually wouldn't be surprised to see Spell Queller go as well. But Reflector Mage, I think, is just a little bit too overpowered for what its cost is. Okay, well, let's take a look at what it does. So when it enters the battlefield, you get a 2/3 body for 3, and that's actually already pretty good, right? So it's just a little bit off your curve. Like 3/3 for 3 would be the best, but 2/3 for 3 is not bad, right? So you get a creature, it actually is somewhat of a threat onto the battlefield. And keep in mind that this creature is going into kind of a control-y type deck, right? So red-white is like your control and taxes type deck, right? So, like, you're going to get this on, and you can almost, like, prevent your opponent from having any other creatures, right? So then you return one of your target creatures to their hand, okay? So especially, like, let's say you're casting this on, let's say, turn 3 at the earliest, but, let's say you get them out on turn 4 or 5, you return one of your opponent's creatures. Okay, well, what if they don't have any other creatures, right? Or what if they don't have anything else? Right? Well, okay, you might say, well, too bad for them. And yeah, that's true in a way. But, you basically, for 3 mana, you get a 2/3 creature onto the battlefield. You put that creature back into your opponent's hand, so their next turn, they might not have anything to cast, right? Or, then the next turn after that, they have to recast that creature. And so it's like, almost like you're time walking them almost 2 turns. Right? Like, for 3 mana. It's just that it does too much. Right? So what I think it might have been better is if this was like, if this was like a 1/1, for instance, I think that might have been okay. If it just returned the creature to the owner's hand like a Vapor Snag would, then I think it might be okay as well. But not allowing the person to cast it again the next turn is really, really bad. And especially when you combine this like with Panharmonicon or something like that, it can be really oppressive. And I know, like, I actually, anybody who watches my channel knows that I love, like, playing those control-y type decks and taxes decks and stuff like that. But playing against those decks sometimes, like, especially when you're doing this draw go type thing, you finally get something down, someone Reflector Mages it back to your hand, and then it's just back to draw go. Like, it just makes it so it's not fun. So I can see why they got rid of this card, although, just because it's not my style, doesn't mean that, doesn't mean it doesn't belong in the game. So I could see why they might, why they would take this out, especially of standard where there's limited removal for this. In modern, I don't think that they would ban this, but it can be, I can see why it would be banned, but I don't know. This one's kind of an iffy one. Now, heading over to modern, we have Gitaxian Probe. Now, Gitaxian Probe, I have to agree, even though, I play 4 of these in Lantern Control, I don't really play them too much in too many of my other hands, and I think, it's not necessarily going to break any particular deck, but the problem is that it's just OP, right? Like, to be able to get an extra card for 2 life is actually just huge. And then also to be able to look at your opponent's hand, for just 2 life is actually, really sweet. Like, think about, the beginning of a game. Like, would you be willing to start your game at 18 life instead of 20 if you got an extra card and if you also got to see what your opponent had in their hand? Right? Like, so you got, and that's just at the beginning of a game. Right? So if you were playing a control deck and you've got a major combo ready to come out, you can Gitaxian Probe and see if the coast is clear, so this is actually just huge. And yeah, some people say it just actually cycles a card, it's not actually just giving you any card advantage. Well, actually it is giving you card advantage, right? Because you get to draw a card that you didn't have before. And even if you get a dead card, you're still like a card, let's just say you just drew another land. Well, you still got to thin out your library a little bit, and you're getting more towards that one card you need, right? So there's been many, many times where a Gitaxian Probe is just saved my butt, in Lantern Control or something like that. And it's great, but I can see why this card would be banned. It's just, being able to cast the spell for free, especially one that's so versatile that you can see what your opponent has and see if they're even a threat at the time, and then also draw an extra card. I can totally get why this one would be banned. Finally, we're at the last card, is Golgari Grave Troll. Now, Golgari Grave Troll is a 4 and a green for a 0/0 that enters the battlefield with one counter on it, a +1/+1 counter for each creature card in your graveyard. And then you can pay 1, remove one of those counters, regenerate, and the big thing is that it has Dredge 6. Right, so Wizards is just saying basically they don't like Dredge, and so they don't want Dredge to be a thing, and so that's why they banned this card. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, okay, there's other Golgari cards that you can use to Dredge. If you see Dredge becoming a major deck again, you'll probably see that those ones get banned as well. So I wouldn't go investing a ton of money in those, mainly because they've just said they don't like Dredge, they don't want it to be a mechanic. And so, what that means to me is that if they are going to if they see Dredge picking up again, they're just going to ban another card until it's not a thing, right? So, I would be reluctant to keep playing the Dredge mechanic. But, if you want to, go ahead. I know a lot of people really love this mechanic, and those that Prized Amalgam, Narcomoebo type deck, is really popular right now. So, I don't know, this one again, I'm just kind of okay with. I kind of agree again with what Wizard says, and, I don't always agree with what they say, but, the problem is that you have to sideboard for this card. For this deck, right? So you see a lot of my sideboards, for instance, always have, Relic of Progenitus or something like that, or what's that, Ravenous Trap or something like that, because you have to basically expect it, and if you're not sideboarding for this, or, then you're just going to probably lose, right? So, when you have something that your opponents have to sideboard for all the time, it creates kind of a problem. Now, my one argument, though, is that, especially in Modern, there's always decks that you have to sideboard for. Okay, so for instance, you're always going to have to see Affinity, you're always going to see Infect, or other decks like that, those other decks that are pretty huge. And so, I don't know why Wizards isn't a lot more, punishing of those decks, and they say, okay, well, why don't they say Affinities, just getting too strong and take something out there. It seems like they're really kind of trying to promote just a handful of archetypes, which is, again, something that I don't particularly like. And if you watch my channel, like regularly, you'll see like the deck techs I do are rarely just like your standard, your standard decks. Like, for instance, like I have like, Lantern Control or something like that on there. But most of the time I'm doing budget builds or home brews or smaller, lesser known builds that are still fun to play. And that's what I think is really fun about Magic is brewing and, like getting those different types of decks out and seeing like what they can do, even if you're not winning all the time. So anyways, those are my thoughts, on these. Let me know what you think. Like, do you think these are fair, or do you think that, Wizards should just have a free for all? In some of the online discussions, I've seen people say like, you know what, let's just make it the Wild West and just open it up and have no bans at all. I think that would probably be a mistake because, some of those cards, like if you think Affinity is strong now, like if you put those artifact lands back in, like you'll see Affinity just become like monstrous. It'll be so bad and it would destroy the game. Same thing with like, if you could put back like all these infinite combos like Bloodbraid Elf and, Umezawa's Jitte and stuff like that in there, like you'll see the decks just get, ridiculous. So, one thing is like, keep in mind that it's not just about that one deck that you love, but we have to keep the formats balanced as best as we can, and it's almost impossible to do that with however many cards are in Modern. Like there's probably thousands of cards in Modern, right? So it's very difficult to do that. But anyways, let me know what you think. Tell me if you think one of these cards shouldn't be banned, or if there's another card that should be banned. One that I've seen a lot of people say is Panharmonicon. So let me know, should Panharmonicon be banned? Do you think it will get banned on the next round? Because there's one actually coming up pretty quick. Anyways, let me know what you think. Remember, if you do like my videos, to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you next time. It's that time again for a random card review. So let's pick a random card and check it out. Alright, so Roaring Slagworm. Alright, so Roaring Slagworm is from Darksteel. It's a 5 of anything and 2 green for a 6/4. So 7 mana for a 6/4. Doesn't seem really that great. Like, I mean, it's okay. When Roaring Slagworm attacks, tap all artifacts. Well, I don't know. That effect doesn't really seem to be that good. Like, mainly because, like, with Roaring, like, most artifacts don't have to be untapped to use them. Like, some do, like, I think Howling Mine or things like that, or artifact creatures, obviously. But the problem is, basically this would, I guess, it would make it so artifact creatures couldn't defend you or something like that. But it seems to be, like, a very narrow type use, especially for a 7 mana card. Like, this is usually a finisher, so like that's what I would imagine. And I imagine for 7 mana you could probably find like something much better, right? I think like Craterhoof Behemoth is only like 8 mana, so I mean, I would maybe rather have that into giant, as a giant creature. Or like Ishkana, I think is also, let's take a look here. So Ishkana, Graph Widow. Right, so Ishkana is only 5 mana with Reach and Delirium, and then you can and basically can ping your opponent. So I mean, like, that is much. I'd rather have an Ishkana than Roaring Slagworm or something like that. I don't know. It just seems like it's very narrow, for what it is. I guess it might be good depending, like, if you have a very specific build, But overall, I don't know. I'd say 2 out of 5. 3 out of 5 seems kind of high, depending on what it is. Often, just so you know, like, what I like to do is when I see a card like this and I see like an unusually high rating, I'll often go to the discussions and see what people say about it, right? And you can see here synergy with Fellow Worm, Bellowing Tangleworm, right? So, here's someone mentioned Howling Mine or whatever. But you can see, often you can go here and see like what happens here. So Intimidate, so this creature can't be blocked except by artifact creatures. Okay, and then other green creatures you control have Intimidate. So if you had Bellowing Tangleworm out and also Roaring Slagworm, then them attacking together would make it so, it'd be very difficult to defend against them. But still, it just seems like very narrow. I wouldn't play it. I'd give it maybe a 2 out of 5 instead of 3 out of 5. Anyways, that's my review. If you disagree, let me know in the comments. If you see this used anywhere, then, let me know. I'd like to know. Sometimes people will say, hey, you're totally wrong about that card. And then, maybe I'll build a deck out of it. Anyways, hope you like the review. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.